Good afternoon. Good morning. I'm Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. I'm pleased to be here today to announce a groundbreaking series of reforms that my office has negotiated with GNC, one of the largest manufacturers and retailers of herbal supplements in the country. I'm joined by Executive Deputy Attorney General for Regional Affairs Marty Mack and Senior Advisor and Special Counsel Simon Brandler. Last December, my office purchased a variety of store-brand herbal supplements from stores in different parts of New York State. We targeted 4 major retailers and tested the house brand of herbal supplements from Walmart, Walgreens, Target, and GNC. We used DNA barcoding to test these supplements to see if there was evidence of the DNA of the products that were listed on the labels, and found that only 21% of the products we tested in fact had DNA evidence that they contained the product listed on the label. The DNA barcoding also revealed that about 35% of the samples contained contaminants that were not listed on the label. In GNC's case, we analyzed 6 Herbal Plus brand supplements, which is the name of their house brand, Herbal Plus, and again, from stores in different parts of the state, and our testing found that only one supplement consistently tested for its labeled contents. Their garlic supplement consistently tested for the DNA of garlic. But other supplements that we tested, only 22% of the cases did they show the DNA of the product listed on the label. So we had an issue that we raised with GNC. We identified this as a problem, and the labels that say St. John's wort and echinacea have to contain St. John's wort and echinacea. This has nothing to do with a dispute over the efficacy of the product. This has to do with consumer fraud. So GNC agreed to talk with us and help deal with this issue, and we're announcing our land-breaking agreement with them today. This is a huge breakthrough in a massive industry. Over half of all American adults regularly take supplements. They spend more than $5 billion a year to do it, and American consumers deserve to get what they pay for, especially when it comes with promises of better health. Counterfeit or contaminated supplements pose a significant danger to those who have food allergies or take contraindicated medication, and there have been plenty of examples of supplements causing severe harm to consumers. A 2013 outbreak of hepatitis struck at least 72 people in 16 states and was traced to a tainted supplement. Products falsely identified as black cohosh, an herb commonly taken to reduce menopause symptoms, is believed to have caused severe liver damage to women using the product. And last October, an infant at a Connecticut hospital actually died when doctors gave the child a popular probiotic supplement that was later found to be contaminated. Contrary to popular belief and common sense, although people take supplements for their purported health benefits, they are not regulated like pharmaceutical drugs by the Federal Food and Drug Administration. And it's very important to understand that we came into this sector and have taken this aggressive approach because the federal regulatory regime is simply not good enough to protect American consumers. The FDA, thanks to decades of special interest lobbying, must treat supplements like food, not like drugs. They can't perform the same tests and impose the same requirements as they do on other pharmaceutical drugs. Producers do not need prior approval before selling supplements. They get to choose their own techniques for testing their quality, and it is these lax rules and the impediments put in the way of the FDA by federal legislation that required us to take the steps we've taken, because right now herbal supplement manufacturers and retailers are really outside of the reach of the FDA. So with this in mind, after doing our tests of products from these 4 different national chains, on February 2nd, my office sent cease and desist letters to GNC and the 3 others, calling for them to immediately remove from their shelves the herbal supplements with the same lot codes as the samples we tested. We also requested detailed information relating to the production, processing, and testing of their herbal supplements, as well as a thorough explanation of their quality control measures. A little more than a week later, on February 11th, my office issued subpoenas to GNC and the 3 other retailers seeking additional documents, including records of the origins and nature of all component ingredients, as well as the manufacturing process and quality control. We want to know what tests they are performing to ensure that the products are what they say they are and don't include contaminants that aren't on the label. GNC removed the supplements which were in the same lots as the supplements we tested from their stores in New York State, and has cooperated fully with our investigation. A short time ago, we entered into negotiations, the result of which is today's landmark agreement. This agreement will create a national model for other manufacturers and retailers of herbal supplements, and it is something that we hope others in the industry will follow as quickly as possible. Under the terms of this agreement, GNC has agreed to make several groundbreaking reforms, and it's important to understand that these reforms go beyond what is required by the weak, dysfunctional federal regime of regulation. Perhaps the most significant reform involves the use of DNA barcoding, the same scientific method we used in our investigation, to authenticate the active ingredients used in GNC's herbal supplements. GNC will use DNA barcoding to confirm the authenticity of all plants as active ingredients in its products. And in cases where there is no genetic barcode available, the most popular herbal supplements have DNA barcodes already available for the scientists to use. There are some products that do not have the barcodes yet. GNC has agreed to work to identify and create barcodes for those plants so that the DNA barcoding and authentication can take place, and that GNC will then contribute those barcodes and the methodology used to identify them into a publicly accessible database. GNC is also going to require its suppliers to get certified by a third-party accreditation body to ensure that ingredients purchased by GNC are being manufactured in compliance with the FDA's current good manufacturing processes. The current good manufacturing processes are the FDA's primary method of regulating this area. It requires cleanliness and other things in the manufacturing process, but we need third-party oversight to ensure compliance, because as of fiscal 2013, the last year for which we have data, the FDA only managed to get to 2.8% of the manufacturers of herbal supplements, but of the group they got, almost 2 out of 3 were in violation of the current good manufacturing practices of the FDA. So GNC is now going to ensure that all of its suppliers get certified that they are complying with these minimal rules that the FDA imposes. Today's agreement also requires GNC to test for potential allergens at both the beginning and end of the manufacturing process. GNC's suppliers will conduct randomized testing of the herbal ingredients they sell to GNC for the 8 most common allergens as defined by the FDA. GNC will then test its products again at the finished product stage. And GNC, very importantly, GNC has also agreed that this testing will confirm that any affirmative representations on product labels, such as no soy, no wheat, no sugar, are all accurate. Under the terms of this agreement, GNC must also create and prominently display signage at store locations nationwide that explains the difference between whole herbs and extracts. It will provide the same information on its website. In particular, they're going to be required to make it clear to customers that extracts are highly processed chemical compounds. This may come as a shock to many who believe extracts are simply another version of a whole herb. The FDA has not ever implemented regulations defining what you call an extract and what you don't. So GNC has agreed to transparency so consumers will know what is actually an herb and what is something that are some chemicals that were extracted through a process that GNC is going to now disclose on its website and in signs for extracting chemicals from the herb. These changes, taken together, will give GNC consumers confidence that a supplement they purchase is actually what the label says it is, and that precautions have been taken to ensure authenticity. GNC will be required to implement these new procedures for all of its 6,000 stores, or I think it's actually well over 6,000 stores around the country, and I believe the new model will have a significant impact on the supplement industry. I'm urging all herbal supplement manufacturers and retailers to follow the lead and example of GNC, to work with my office and to safeguard the wellness of our customers. The bottom line is that companies that manufacture or sell herbal supplements have a responsibility to make sure their products contain every ingredient that's on the label and do not include ingredients that are not on the label. This is not a matter of complex science, ladies and gentlemen. This is simply a matter of protecting consumers from fraud and protecting people from possible negative reactions to chemicals that aren't listed. My office will continue to pursue this issue. All evidence suggests that the problems we've identified in our investigation are the rule, not the exception, in the herbal supplement industry, I'm pleased that GNC has agreed to take the steps I have outlined. There are a lot of companies out there that have not gotten to that point yet, and we will continue our investigation. And I have to note that we have been joined and supported in this work by the Attorneys General from Connecticut, George Jepsen, and Attorney General Zeller from Indiana, as well as by the government of Puerto Rico. And now we can probably take some questions.
You can identify yourself in the outlet comments for this topic.
Yes, hi, Juliet Papa from Texas. Are they required, I don't know, by the FDA or maybe by this agreement, to have a certain percentage of the product in the product? Let's say echinacea has to have 50% of echinacea in there.
Well, they have to list all the products. Again, under the FDA regime is extraordinarily weak. And this is largely because of a 1994 bill that was passed through Congress and signed into law that really precludes the FDA from performing the same sort of testing and imposing the same standards as they do on regular drugs. They can require drug makers to list that they have a certain amount of ibuprofen in Advil. That's not true with these herbal remedies. So the first step is to ensure that the product is what it says it is, and they're not allergens or contaminants. And then under the current FDA regime, we have to rely on consumers to determine if it works for them or not. We have gotten tremendous feedback since we started this investigation, and there is much more scrutiny by consumers and consumer advocates of these products. And I think we can look forward to more of that as we go forward. Senators Durbin, Blumenthal, and others have called on Congress to hold hearings and there has been an effort in the past to reverse this bad 1994 legislation. It has not succeeded, but we think this is going to give some new impetus to reform at the federal level.
And did you just find anything that had absolutely no trace of what they said?
Yes, and in our initial testing, 79% of the products we tested had no trace of the DNA. They did have traces of DNA for other things like rice and houseplants. So the barcoding worked. When there was DNA for garlic, it found it. I think in the case of black cohosh, it was another product. There was 1 out of 4 bottles of a GNC product that tested for it. The DNA was found. It's been an unregulated industry for far too long. There's too much money being made, and there is too weak a regulatory regime. It was an open invitation for people to have lax practices and even commit fraud, and that's something we're turning around starting today.
Chris is Mike from Bloomberg. So what is the status of things now with the other 3 retailers, and does this agreement actually end the state's inquiry into GNC's supplement practice?
Well, GNC has agreed to enter into this inquiry, and it's enter into this agreement. GNC's agreement is a 36-month agreement. They're going to give us reports every 6 months so we can monitor their progress. We are very optimistic that they're going to follow through on this and set up a regime that actually does work much better than the current federal requirements. As to the other manufacturers and retailers that we have sent letters to and we've subpoenaed, our investigations continue. And at the end of the 36 months agreement with GNC, if they've successfully implemented all the reforms they've agreed to, then we're not going to go back after them. But if they haven't, we haven't waived any rights to pursue them. So the overwhelming majority of herbal supplement manufacturers and retailers are still subject to investigation by my office.
Yes. Hi, Peter Haskell with CBS. Is this more about consumers getting ripped off because they're not getting what they believe, or is it more about health risks when things are in there that aren't on the label?
Well, there are really 3 issues here. We have not really even gotten involved in the issue of the efficacy of these products. So we're not vouching for or against any of the herbal supplements, but we have determined that New York State's consumer protection laws, which are very strong and which are not preempted by any federal law, require that you do not deceive consumers in your labeling. So if you say something is echinacea and it tests as not having echinacea in it, that's just fraud. And this is, there's been an effort to raise some confusion about scientific methodology. This is not some complex scientific issue. We're not talking about neurotransmitters or black holes. We're just talking about fraud against consumers in selling something that's not what it says it is on the label, and as you point out, also containing other allergens and things that may cause problems for consumers. GNC has agreed to a set of protocols that we think will deal with that problem, and we're hoping that the rest of the industry will follow.
Warren Levinson from the Associated Press. What does it tell you about the state of regulation that an agreement that a company says it will cetera, is considered groundbreaking?
Well, this is something that has been written about in connection with other regulators at the federal level and the problems of inadequate regulation, certainly something that I dealt with and my office dealt with a lot in the context of the collapse of the housing market and the lack of bank regulators to intervene and protect Americans from the implosion of that market. In this case, the FDA has a much clearer trail that really demonstrates why it can't do its job. It relates to this 1994 legislation, which I find to be remarkable. I guess the industry was in its infancy then, and people were convinced that they should allow these folks to have a chance to grow. But this is something that has to be dealt with in the first instance by Congress to allow the FDA to really do its job. And then there's also this issue of resources and funding. They do require that you follow current good manufacturing practices, but they only have the resources to inspect 2.8% of the manufacturers in the last fiscal year for which we have data. And they found that almost 2 out of 3 of the manufacturers weren't even following this minimal standard of following good practices. So GNC is now going to ensure through third-party inspection that it only buys supplies from those that are following good manufacturing practices as dictated by the FDA. I am sorry that we have to come in and work out an agreement with a private company and bring third-party validators in order to ensure that consumers are protected from fraud and possibly dangerous allergens or products that are contraindicated for them. But this is what we have to do in the absence of a coherent and effective regulatory scheme at the federal level, and I will not hesitate to do it in other areas. We have a lot of problems related to the collapse of many parts of the federal government, and this is just one example, and I look forward to working with my colleagues in other states to address these problems.
Yeah, hi. Steve Wilson, WABC. How long is it going to take for these new reforms to actually see in the GNC when I go in there? And if I'm picking up a bottle, how would I know it's the new one that's under the reforms versus the old one?
Well, the GNC has a plan, and as I said, we're going to be working with them very closely, and they'll be issuing reports to us every 6 months. Some of the reforms are going to go into effect pretty much right away, and some of them are going to take a little bit longer to implement. As far as the DNA barcoding, as I indicated, because of the lax regulation in the past, there are some products that scientists haven't even got a DNA barcode to compare it to. So if you have a product that says it's a particular herb, it's not a very popular one, GNC has agreed to go dig in and develop those barcodes, donate them to a publicly accessible database, and to start using barcoding to test its products. So there will be a transitional period, but this is an effort to create an entire regulatory apparatus built on the rubble of this federal set of procedures that just are dysfunctional and don't regulate it at all.
So, just to be clear, unless I see the DNA barcode on there, they haven't been changed, and they may actually be the old ones that have other stuff that has plants in them.
The GNC is going to implement some of these changes immediately, and I think that as far as the signage and the information available to consumers, you're going to see some of that right away. And the other stuff's going to take a little bit of time. But this is a very significant undertaking by a significant company breaking with the patterns and practices of the industry. So we're prepared to work with them to get this set up. We want to have a system set up that protects people going forward for the long haul. And I do think this is going to call attention to the problem at the federal level and maybe provide the impetus for some of our colleagues in Washington to fix the problem at the FDA level.
Last one on this. Is there a financial component to this settlement?
Not in the sense of GNC paying a fine. This is going to cost them a lot of money to set up. This is a much higher set of standards and practices than any of the other major retailers use. We're continuing to pursue others in the industry, but this is really setting up a model protocol going forward. If I wish that we didn't have to do this. I wish that the FDA had a set of procedures like this that were imposed uniformly throughout the industry and that they had the resources to police it. They don't. So my office is doing it along with GNC, and we're going to continue to pursue the others in this area.
But just to follow up, in terms of the consumer fraud that you described, why is there not some kind of fine or punishment?
So we were at the very beginning stages of the investigation. As noted in our agreement, we've not reached a final determination about fraud. I mean, this is a huge enterprise with well over 6,000 stores. There's, I think, more than 20 private class actions that are seeking recovery for a consumer that can demonstrate that they bought a product. That we're trying to look forward and set up a set of protocols that can serve as a model for the industry. We're really trying to fill in the gap left by the dysfunctional federal system.
Move on to other topic. Sorry.
Want to get your reaction to the ethics agreement in the state legislature you called for an outright ban on outside income, and this does not do that, so.
Well, I've made my position on the need for comprehensive ethics reform, including a complete overhauling of our campaign finance, ethics, and bribery laws, clear. I gave a speech 2 weeks ago setting out a set of proposals. I have not seen the final copy of this, but from what I understand, it does sound as though this is more tinkering around the edges, accompanied by some fairly strong and recycled language about how this really solves all the problems. I do believe that there will be a day that's going to come, not before too long, when we will enact comprehensive reforms in New York State. It appears that this is not that day.
So do you think that you raise the specter of we keep making these deals and this corruption keeps happening and it's this cycle? Do you see this as sort of become more part of that?
As I said 2 weeks ago, there are only two paths forward. One is stay on the current track. There will be more investigations, more prosecutions, and further erosion of public confidence. The other track is comprehensive reform. I've been working on this for a few decades, and I've come to believe that you simply can't handle this through disclosure, that a ban on outside income accompanied by a significant raise is the right way to do this. There's nothing that requires us to work in public service forever. If you're a lawyer, you can take a break from private practice, do public service, and go back to your firm. But I don't think that this is going to get at the root of corruption, and I'm afraid we're going to continue with this same pattern until broader reforms are enacted.
Last one in the front.
Could you explain why probes into the Dominican and Puerto Rican Day parades led to board and leadership changes, but pertaining to the Met Council did not?
In completely different situations. The Met Council board funded its own internal investigation, developed evidence, and turned it over to our office. We worked with the Met Council board to identify the small number of people who were siphoning money off from a charity that performed and delivered a lot of good services. We identified the folks who were siphoning off money, who were essentially looting the charity, and have worked with the board that brought us the evidence in the first place to enact further reforms and ensure that it is able to go forward and provide those services. Completely different situations.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Thanks, guys.